call this meeting to order. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Vallecitos Water District for Wednesday, April 19th, 2017. And could I ask Director Evans to lead us in the pledge?
My pleasure. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Here.
Here. Present. Here. Here. Okay, next is adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Been moved and second to adopt this meeting's agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Okay, public comment. Persons wishing to address a matter not on the agenda may be heard at this time. However, no action will be taken until the matter is placed on a future agenda in accordance with board policy. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. The request to speak form is required to be submitted to the executive secretary prior to the start of the meeting if possible. Public comment should start by stating name, address, and topic. The board is not permitted during this time to enter into a dialogue with the speaker. So far, I don't have any slips. Okay, on to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar will be voted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or member of the public requests that a particular item be removed from the consent calendar, in which case it will be considered separately under action items.
Move for approval.
Second. Want to pull for 1.6, 1.7, 1.10, 1.12.
I'll entertain a motion to adopt the consent calendar with the exception of those 4 items. I get a second?
Second.
Been moved and second to approve the consent calendar with the exception of the 4 items. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Okay, item 1.6.
1.4. Oh, excuse me. Yes.
Was there a specific question on 1.6 that we can address, or did you want a short presentation?
Yeah, there's, there's a couple of questions they have on it. First of all, as I'm looking at the map, I didn't, and I should have realized it sooner, but I looked at it today. I didn't really realize where that property is. And I tried to coordinate it and figure it out by looking at just the board. So if you have it, we can put it up there. If you don't have it, then my question is gonna be, seems to be a lot of off-site mitigation being done, or is that just the way I'm reading it incorrectly?
No, so basically the intent of this is there's a property that's not fronting any of our facilities here on Rock Springs Road. Okay, yeah, there's the map. So it's not practical for the district to require a water or sewer line extension.
I'm sorry, is this the property?
That's the property, correct.
Then I pulled the wrong one. Okay. And I pulled the wrong one, and I apologize, and we can move on beyond that.
I'll entertain a motion to approve
So
1.6.
move to approve?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve consent item 1.6. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Okay, consent item 1.7.
Same thing, we put it up on the screen. Okay, my question on this one is, the blue line that I see, the existing line, across the entire top,
Yes, on Via Las Brisas.
right?
Mhm.
That's the existing line today.
Correct.
And when we do a temporary off-site water and sewer service agreement, and I know because the last meeting or a couple of meetings ago, we just moved one from a temporary to a permanent, and it was like 33 years old or something. Is there a reason why we do a temporary instead of just going right to the agreement?
Typically, we avoid permanent offsites whenever possible in case there happens to be a coal reconfiguration of properties adjacent to it that may require development in the future. So we will hold these as temporary in the case that that does or could happen at some point in the future. If it turns out here that there's absolutely no possible way, at that point, we might consider a permanent offsite.
Okay, thank you. Move to approve?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve consent item 1.7. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Okay, item 1.10. Resolution in support of Aqua.
Yeah, if I could have someone explain to me exactly, as I read through it, what are we supporting? Exactly what is it we are supporting and?
So I'll try to address that. So Aqua has developed a strong policy statement to try to address what the state is doing on unimpaired flow definitions for the Bay Delta watershed. So long time ago, the state developed what they call the co-equal goals of water supply and environmental protections. And Aqua believes that the state is erring too far on the side of environmental protections without recognizing the water supply benefits. So the state wants us to look at the Bay Delta as if it was unimpaired, as if there weren't diversions of flows taking place when they're doing some of their water quality perspectives. And all Aqua wants us to do is, it wants the state to do is take a look at the Bay Delta, recognizing the co-equal goals that have been a longstanding pillar. So that's all we're doing, is we're adopting a resolution of support for Aqua's position against the state's approach.
Thank you. Move to approve?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item 1.10. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Item 1.12, amendment to general manager's employment agreement.
Item 1.12. It's a difficult one for me to address, but I'm going to try my best. We just negotiated a general manager's contract in last year in October, I think, is when the negotiation took place.
Right.
And there was some back and forth, actually. I think we accepted, made an offer, then it was countered, and then we accepted the counter, or we went back on another counter, but there was give and take. There was a little back and forth. And in it, for whatever reason, the COLA wasn't addressed one way or the other. So, and I assume that's because both parties, I know I certainly didn't think about it. My question is, I hate to, two sides of it. I think our general manager is doing the best job anybody in the world could have done in this last 4 or 5 months. There's not a negative word to say. You've been great, and I know you're going to continue to be great.
Thank you.
But let me get that out of the way. With that being said, any negotiation at this point, I think, should be contractual. I think if we wanted to give him a COLA increase, and maybe as a bonus for doing a good job, maybe that's an idea of something that we can do, but make that part and parcel of our negotiations next October, whenever it's due. You know, whatever we do now is part and parcel of that negotiation. It's not just automatic. I think the general manager should be treated completely different from all other employees, especially if he's doing such a great job. I don't want to hold him to just a COLA. You know, at the same time, I don't want to guarantee a COLA, depending on who the general manager is. If it was you, it would be a guarantee. But I'm just saying, so I want the understanding, it's we just negotiated, we're 4 months into it, and boy, what a tough time to say, oh yeah, by the way, there's a bonus out there. You know, I'm not saying we shouldn't do something, but I'd like to get other people's opinion on how it should be handled, I guess.
Dr. Snow.
I think I follow what you're saying, Director Martin, and if we do pass this as is tonight, it will make the COLA, if I understand it correctly, an automatic year after year, whatever the, was it the CIP or the CPI?
CPI.
CPI, annual percentage increases for cost of living adjustment, that will happen.
I don't so much have a concern with that, but along the lines that you had mentioned about, we just went through a negotiation process. I do wholeheartedly agree with you that that is a concern for me, and that while I can support this, I would like to make it effective starting the first day of the next fiscal year, which I believe is not too far from now, July 1st, if I understand correctly. So that would make me feel more comfortable in supporting this change.
Any other comments?
I have a question on one thing. By moving at Director Sinella's suggestion of doing it in July 1st, does that mean you would you're on a calendar basis, or your COLA would be effective with the employees the next round? Or does it mean your COLA will always then fall, and I'm not asking, I don't know who I'm asking, or does that mean your COLA falls oddly enough on July 1st every year after that? I don't know how so you're earning half a COLA or whole COLA next, I guess I need financing to explain to me. How does this the date differ in the amount he's receiving?
Maybe if I can offer up, it all depends on how we want to write the contract. So my situation is different than the rest of the employees in that I have an employment contract. Just as a point of clarification, the original agreement, the existing agreement, does address the COLA, and it specifically says the board has to make a decision. So it was intended not to be automatic, but so when I read the language and it said the board has to take an action, I put it on the closed session for the board to give direction, and the direction was we had to bring it forward in the open session, and that's what we're doing right now. And as far as the linkage between a COLA-based increase and a merit-based increase, the contract also contemplates that, the existing as well as the proposed agreement. It basically says, the new language says, I would get the same COLA, and any merit-based increase would be at the discretion of the full board. It would have to come in front of the board. So in terms of the timing, we can control that through whatever language in the contract we want to see, whether it's a one-time COLA or it's every year on July 1st, or if it's the same as the employees, which I think typically is in March. I want to say that the San Diego region CPI is released.
Okay, so my question then is, in this option in front of us today, you would receive an annual cost of living increase, and the intention of this was as of when the employees received theirs, which was
It was March. Is that what you're
March
asking?
1st
Yeah.
or something like that,
Is
all
that-
right?
is that-
And effective on the same date. To me, I feel a COLA is a COLA. It's an increase in living, and it's not tied to personally when a contract starts. I think if our GM is doing an excellent job, which I believe he is, my feelings are we should tie it to the employees as the historical thing goes. And this does state very clearly, if we want to give a merit increase to him at the renewal of his contract, we're welcome to do that in October. But my feeling is I'd support the recommendation as offered. In fact, I'd make a motion for that. I move we approve the amendment to the general manager's employment agreement as per, what's the words? As
More
per.
compensation.
Well, right now we have a motion. I don't know if we have a second yet.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the amendment as presented. Any further discussion? Director Martin.
Okay, well, the cost of living adjustment is made for all the employees from January 1st of 2016 to January 1st of 2017. Cost of living adjustment, isn't that how it's based on, that year?
Well, I don't know if it's that time period. It's a 12-month period until the next CPI is released.
In that 12 months, that's why they get it, I thought that's why they got it in March. And truthfully, to be honest about it, you're only here 3 months of that 12 months. I don't see how you justify the cost of living adjustment for only 3 months of being here for that year, where everyone else gets it for the full year.
Well-
I'm just looking at a fairness doctrine here.
My understanding is if a new employee walks in the door a week before the COLA is to be given, they get the COLA also, am I correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so
There's,
it's,
there's no term of, yeah, there's no term of service required to be eligible for the cost of living increase. All employees on the payroll as of the time of the CPI increase get that increase.
Point of clarification then, is that Vallecitos policy, is that state law? Sounds like we might need a new policy.
I'm-
Is that our MOU policy, in other words?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's
in your
an MOU policy, and you're not covered by that.
no, he's not. I was just pointing out that for a regular employee, that's the case. Just
Okay, no, and I appreciate that. I just, and this is in no way a detriment, it just doesn't seem like and if he gets it, that's fantastic, I'm happy. If he doesn't, I'm happy. Doesn't really make a difference, except that it just doesn't seem to be right to do that 4 months into an employment contract, in my opinion. That's just totally my opinion. And during our negotiations, if you do get it, it's gonna be a definite part of that negotiation. Because you already got a $4,000 increase, and you weren't here for 3/4 of the time. In my opinion, but that's just mine.
Okay, and I'll just reiterate, I have the same concern. I think, Ben, you're doing a wonderful job. And, I have no concerns about your performance whatsoever. I think that the district's heading definitely in the right direction. This is not about you or about your performance whatsoever. It's just about the timing. And I'm comfortable with implementing this. If I was trying to, by suggesting fiscal year, speed it up a little bit, but I'd be, when I came in here tonight and was preparing for this meeting at home, in my mind was more like January 1st, or the next time the CPI comes out. I was, when I suggested the fiscal year, it was just kind of okay, well, let's find some middle ground and see if we can, try to work that out and come to a consensus with the board. But I can't support it as the motion has been stated right now, but certainly if we were to amend that motion for it to take effect the next time the CPI or January 1, 2018, whatever the most appropriate way to handle the next time that there's a COLA adjustment, I certainly could support it at that time.
any other discussion? Well, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
I,
No?
I believe there's three ayes and 2 noes. The ayes have it. Okay, I think that concludes the items we pulled on consent.
Mine.
Okay. Item 2.1, Executive Order E-40-17.
Okay, so I'll just give a little preface here. So the state of California has been working for some time to develop a framework that will address water use and conservation during all times, not just during periods of drought. And recently, the state did issue its final framework, and Chris will provide an overview of the framework, give a brief discussion about what it means to Vallecitos, and we'll be prepared to answer any questions that the board may have. So, Chris?
General Manager Quinn. Director, President Elevart, board members, I'm here to give you an update, as Glenn stated, on making water conservation California way of life. I gave a brief update on the draft portion of this a few months ago, and I gave you a lot of dates within that PowerPoint. I just whittled it down to, hey, February 15th is when our board, you all declared an end to the drought, and then on April 7th, that was when Governor Brown ended the drought state of emergency in most of California, but also issued the report and also issued an executive order that I'm going to go through. The latest executive order is B-4017. It lifts the drought emergency in the state except in 4 counties. It rescinds that water supply stress test. I think you're all aware that we had to look at our water supplies and compare it to some drought measures and determine whether or not we need to implement drought restrictions, and we did not. It rescinds a couple of emergency proclamations, and a couple of his executive orders issued several years ago. And it builds on a previous executive order, B 3716, which remains in effect and is that talk about making water conservation a way of life. So B 3716, his previous executive order, it was on May 9th of 2016. He put together some instructions to these 5 agencies throughout the state to come up with a long-term framework for water conservation and drought planning. The state completed its final report, and the report is organized around 4 big primary themes: use water more wisely, eliminate water waste, strengthen local drought resilience, and then improve agricultural water use efficiency, and then also drought planning. That's a look at the document. It's a 70-odd page document. Chapters 1 and 2, Chapter 1 is just an introductory chapter. Chapter 2 talks about 2017 water conservation regulations. That's a specific change. They used to have the word emergency regulations. Those emergencies have been rescinded. We still have to do monthly reporting to the state of California on water consumption, and there's efforts to reduce water supply or supply leaks and losses, and then also certification of innovative technologies, a lot of plans for water conservation and energy efficiency, and how they're going to manage that. Some of the big important parts of these is in chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3 is the items that don't require any additional legislation. And in chapter 3, there's going to be new water use targets based on strengthened standards. So a lot of targets for water agencies to comply with. Going to have more water shortage contingency plans, and then other things like drought planning for small water suppliers and agricultural water plans. And chapter 4 is going to be talking about implementing the conservation framework.
Chris, can I ask you a question?
Sure enough.
Go ahead.
Go back. Thank you. Recommendations that require new and expanded authorities to implement. What authority are they speaking about?
What they're implying is that they don't have existing rules or regulations to force these items forward at this point. They're going to have to come up with additional regulations, rules to implement these new standards.
Who?
The different state agencies.
Not the legislative agency, the different state agencies you're
Yeah,
going
the
to
Department of Water Resources.
Not the people. Jerry Bounds appointed position people.
And we heard the other day that rather than being an administrative issue, I can't remember the term specifically, but it's,
Will be an enforcement. We become enforcement.
well, not only we, but it's not legislatively approved on these targeted
Trailer bill.
it's on trailer bills that are just rubber stamped and we have nothing to say about it. So that's concerning to me personally. So what I'm seeing here is we're accepting or going to be asked to approve or make recommendations to accept this particular language without knowing how they're going to implement the expanded authorities.
Truly, and as I get further in the PowerPoint, you're going to see some of the timelines that are in there, and it extends well out into the future.
Yes.
So there's a lot more coming.
Okay, well then.
And I would offer that there will be opportunities for the agencies to, as these new regulations are being developed, the agencies will have an opportunity to participate in those discussions. The amount of our influence will be limited.
Well, that's what was brought up, that, yeah, we might be able to do the workshops and all that, but because it is not a legislative issue, then thank you very much and done. So-
Comment noted.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify that right now, today, though, this is for information only. We're not making any kind of decision today.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Except we should figure out what we want to do to make it clear it's not done fairly.
Work tasks.
Yeah, well, I think that's why it's important to work through the industry associations like Aqua to either support or fight legislation that's not in our best interest.
Yep.
And General Manager asked me to reach out to the Water Authority and reach out to Mike Lee and see what the water authority is going to be providing for agencies such as ourselves, and they stated they'd have something for us within the end of the week.
Great.
I think one of the best tactics will be the same tactics that are used by the no-growthers. Just sue and drag it out. Jerry's gone in a year and a half. Sue and drag it out, sue and drag it out, sue and drag it out. Learn from what's done to us.
I'm not gonna go there.
Another portion within the report is the shortages issues. Every agency is going to be required to update their urban water management plan, including a 5-year drought risk assessment. We're going to have more complex water shortage contingency plans contained in those urban water management plans. We're going to have to submit annual assessments, an annual water budget forecast, and if necessary, appropriate shortage response actions according to whatever shortage level is pointed out by that forecast. This one's a big one, the water use targets. We're basically going to have an agency-wide water budget. So based on our population and an indoor standard of, at this point, 55 gallons per capita per day, that's going to be how much we're allotted as an agency for a water budget. There'll be aerial imaging done by the state of the service area and what the irrigation requirements are. There'll be a budget for that. There'll also be a budget for your water loss through leaks based on specific factors like the age of your system and what they expect to see. And this is also contained in SB 555 that myself, Ed Pedrazi, and Rob Shaw work on, and also Mark Arthur. So there's going to be this water budget for every water agency that's coming down the pike.
Quick question for staff. I was told when we were talking about budgets and different ways of charging people that we go to a budget-based system. And I was told that was way too complicated. We'll never be able to do it. It'll cost a fortune. How's the state going to do it for the entire state?
Well, that's a really good question, but ours is just going to be a consolidated figure for the agency as a whole, just counting up the population and doing an aerial image of the district as a whole and then having a, quote, budget for that. Whereas individual budgets for individual homeowners, that's a tricky one because it changes all the time. You know, the population changes, the landscape changes. In fact, one of the things that worries me specifically for our district with individual water budgets for our residential customers is really the farm animals. We've got so many within our service area, much more than I initially imagined. And what is the water budget for a horse versus a llama versus a sheep versus a cow, and how many, and when did it change because the horse had a new foal in February, and how do we allocate that? And it gets really challenging.
Yeah, I think it's important, and maybe Chris was going to mention this, but the fact that the state's going to place the district on a water budget does not mean that the district has to place all of its customers on a water budget. It's up to the district to figure out how they want to live within their water budget.
Absolutely. And truly, I think we'll be good just based on what I've seen. Just as we've been able to meet those targets, you know, when I would come in the previous reports and how we were always, you know, beneath those targets, I think we're in good shape. And it's the next point on there is the compliance with the target measures, and this is in 2025, so this is down the road. The supplier, you know, we get to make decisions on how we want to comply with those target measures. Commercial, industrial, institutional measures. So really hard to budget for those. Everything is different, and as you can imagine, you can't just classify a restaurant. You can have a nice sit-down restaurant where there's linens and tablecloths, silverware and glasses versus a drive-through, and you can't compare the one to the other in their water usage. They're just very different. So what the tasks that we will have to do is any mixed-use meters where it's got a meter that serves both inside of the property and the outside landscape of the property. If it's over whatever certain size threshold that the state will come up with, we won't be able to have a mixed-use meter anymore. We'll have to have a separate irrigation meter We're gonna need to classify all of our commercial, industrial, institutional accounts using the North American Industry Classification System. So that's a work chore for us. And the other one is we'll have to conduct audits and water management plans for commercial customers that are over a certain size. They haven't specified yet what that is. So the EEO agencies will have to develop these regulations by December of 2018. And as Glenn said, there is a public work group that's a part of that. And that's just one phase of it. So here's some of the timelines. As you can see, DWR, which is one of those EO agencies, will be completing pilot projects on landscape area measurement in 2017. There's a whole bunch of dates in 2018 that the EO agencies need to implement and provide water suppliers like landscape area measurement data. It's their burden to provide it. Going on to 2019, they're going to start to finalize all those, rulemaking, adopt the measures, complete the rulemaking, and then in 2025, that's when it's really going to need to be implemented, and then every 5 years, they're going to update it after that. So a rather extensive timeline. And that concludes my report, and I'm open to either questions or any comments from the board.
I would just like to, it's a comment really. I certainly believe that wise use of our water and conservation is important, and I think California has learned a lot in the South, but as a state, we still have a lot to learn about how to use water efficiently, and that it is not a limitless supply. But I do also agree that this is coming down without public input. It's being constructed without a reality basis of understanding of what's involved, whether it's your pig having 16 little pigs instead of the average 12, or your crop growing 1 year or not growing, or you have people move into your house, and no one's and the businesses, all of that. So I think it's real important. If we say it's down the future, but 25 is only 7.5 years away. And in 7.5 years, this industry can move only so fast, but that's a lot of money that the state is asking us. Let me rephrase that. They're not asking us, they're asking our ratepayers and the voters to fund this brilliant idea that they think is so great. And I feel it's really important if we jump into this, that we let the voters and the ratepayers know this is not coming from this board or any of this administration or water agencies as a whole, but this is by your governor and by his appointees and the people you vote for. And that I think the public needs to get aroused a little bit now at having someone telling them you're going to be, and they may say, oh, it's great, I'll have a landscape meter and I'll have a indoor, outdoor, the 2 meters. They're going to pay for it.
Amen.
And they're going to pay for, all of that. And there'll be people who will be able to manipulate that system and have money, water allowances they don't deserve, and other people are trying to do the right thing, just like there is now. So I hope we can somehow just start getting the news out to the people about the reality of what's happening. Not that the idea of conservation itself is not a bad idea, but this is frightening to me. And when we say it's a long ways out, 7 years is a blink. So that's just my comment. Thank you for letting me.
I apologize, but EO, I can't remember what EO is.
Executive order agencies.
Oh, okay. And I parrot and echo what Betty has said. When they told us our percentage, that was no problem. We figured it out. We got it less than that. We did a great job. Telling us now exactly how many square feet of landscaping, because it's one of the examples, I have 0.8 of an acre that was landscaped. I let it die because of the drought. I want to re-landscape it. Well, no, you can't because of the new, this is just deplorable. And what Director Evans has suggested, we need to put this out in our newsletter to identify to our ratepayers that this stuff is coming, and they're not going to have, well, they may have an opportunity to make a discussion about it, but the way it's being told to us, at least to me, is because the way they're going about implementing it, it's going to be no choice. And so to pair it, or to add on to what Director Martin said, there's a veteran's saying, delay, deny, and hope it dies. And I hope we do that right on this particular issue.
Yeah, I think in addition to kind of educating our ratepayers, it'd be good to tell them what they can do about it. 'Cause
Yes.
To tell them
Yes.
what's coming is one
Get
thing,
those
how to
letters
get them
going, because
engaged is another, and I'll work with Chris
We
on
need
that.
their help on this one.
Director Martin?
Yeah, on a lighter note, I did hear the first 2 agencies that comply, get 2 free passes on the train to nowhere.
Well, there you go, there's a.
That's the good news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, item 2.2, rules and regulations governing cross-connection control to protect the public water system.
All right, I'm going to ask John to come up and give a little presentation here, but, so basically, we've had a ordinance, the district has had an ordinance governing cross-connection control and backflow since, I believe, 1986, and we've been working on an update to that ordinance, and that's what John's going to go over tonight.
Thank you, Chairman, President, members of the board. Yeah, our existing ordinance was adopted in December 1986, and some things have changed between then and now. And so this ordinance that's in front of you tonight is an update to that. There is one typo in your staff report under discussion where it says California Municipal Water District Law of 1911. Should actually be County Water District Law of 1949. That's the law that we're under. We are under Title 17, Chapter 5 of the California Government Code and regulations that set forth the rules regarding cross connections, and we do follow those rules. And the new ordinance is in accordance with those rules also. We define cross connection, and this is what they call a backflow device, and I brought this in to show you, and we can pass it around. It's heavy, and it's made out of brass, and it's very popular with people who like to steal them and scrap the metal. That's why when you see them out in the field, they're painted blue, and they have a big cage around them. So.
Oh, see, now I know what that's for.
Sure.
Could you leave that with me when you leave tonight?
It's Inspector Plumber.
Yeah.
Actually, we have that on loan. So.
Oh, yeah, this is at least $10.
I'll take it.
Cross connection itself is defined as any unprotected actual or potential connection between a potable water system such as ours used to supply drinking water for purposes and any source or system containing unapproved water or a substance that is not or cannot be approved as safe, wholesome, and potable. The regulations in Title 17 require a backflow device, such as what you're seeing, be placed where a condition of cross connection exists or possibly exists. So the changes from our existing ordinance from 1986 and this new ordinance, the new ordinance is a lot more robust. It includes, the terminology is brought up to date. The agencies, the public health agency is no longer there. It's now the State Water Resource Control Board. It's been changed. There's a more comprehensive set of terms and definitions in the new ordinance. There's detailed information in Section 5 regarding backflow prevention assemblies, regarding air gap separation, reduced pressure principle backflow prevention assemblies, and new sections on backflow prevention assemblies, removal, upgrading, existing fire detector checks, existing non-conforming fire detection checks, and also where a backflow currently doesn't exist, where there should be one, are all included in the new ordinance. Our recommendation from staff is to approve and adopt the rules and regulations governing cross-connection control to protect the public water system.
Director Martin?
Yeah. I know this wasn't meant to be, but as soon as you got up to talk about cross connections, my flags all went up all over the place. Why is a finance guy telling us about cross connections? And I got to the back page, and I think I see why. There's gonna be costs here, which we haven't really defined. So tell me about the cost over the years. What are we We started doing 86, what was the charge? How has that changed? Is that why you're giving the report?
I'm giving the
Finance.
report because the meter department falls under I'm the finance
Finance?
manager, and the meter department is mine. We have the meter services supervisor, Gina Kirby's here.
Ah.
And Gina's actually in the cross-connection testing class right now at Palomar College. Ed Pedrazi has a cross-connection certification, and he actually oversees the entire program. Regarding costs, our current backflow fee is $2.50 per month per backflow device that a customer has, and it's been that as, I think, as far as I can remember. I've been here 12 years.
And we install that? Or the customer installs it?
Installs the device?
Yep.
Yes, it's their device
It's their device, we charge them $250 to have.
to run our program.
Okay.
Yeah, to have our backflow.
And it's been $250 till the end of time, till the beginning of time.
The beginning of my time, yeah. So
Okay.
that's what
That's,
gives it.
that's all we count. So, on this back page, I see the cost to initially determine the need for protection, the type of backflow, the cost to annually review compliance with this ordinance, the cost to disconnect and or reconnect, any cost incurred by the district. What are we talking about costs here? I mean, what are we planning on seeing come forward to the board the next year?
It's as far as the backflow.
Increases?
Well, what the backflow fee covers is our cost to run the backflow program. What is included in the backflow program is notifying each customer with a backflow that they're due for their annual test. Also included in that notification is who the last tester on record is. And when the backflow device itself is tested, the information from the test comes back to the district, and the district maintains those records to show compliance with the state of California.
Okay. So do we see a need for increased backflows with businesses that haven't had them before? Or are we looking at new businesses that come in? Or both?
At this time, we're not looking at an increase in the backflow fee and the $2.50 a month. We're not looking for an increase in that. There are some sites in our district that do not have backflows, that do need backflows. The cost to install those backflows is the sole responsibility of the owner of the property.
Okay. And give me an idea of XYZ company. What company, type of company, type of company doesn't have one but needs one?
We might have a convenience store.
Okay. So a convenience store needs a backflow?
If they're, what are the?
If any kind of commercial property that has any substance, gases, any kind of pollutants or hazards that could possibly come back into our system, they need those. Any place that has a soda machine, McDonald's, 7-Eleven, Circle K's, any place like that should have them. And we do have sites out there that are not in compliance at this time.
Have we identified approximately how many we have that are in non-compliance?
I think we came up with about 150.
150 that have to come into compliance. And what are we planning on doing? Just sending out a letter? Or we send out our five guy? Or how are we gonna handle that?
Yeah, we would notify those sites that need to have a backflow.
By a personal visit?
We could do a personal visit.
I don't know how it's normally done, I'm just asking, because I know that most people, when they see government stuff, they throw it away. You know, so I mean, they usually need a personal visit.
Yeah, I would suggest that typically what you do is you'd start it out by writing a letter to the person, asking for them to contact you within a certain period of time. If they haven't, you'd reach out to them again, and if they still don't respond, then maybe you start doing site visits to get their compliance.
And a new business, is it a requirement from the city that they have backflows installed?
Yeah, the businesses that qualify under this program will be required to install the device if they're a new business. So the 150 we're talking about are existing businesses that for some reason weren't required to have the device.
Okay.
Maybe they started commercial operation before the ordinance was in place, or it just got missed in a plan check. Whatever the reason, they're not in compliance with the ordinance right now.
Okay, for instance, the strip center is built with 10 different openings in it. Strip center is built, they come to you, they get their water service. You don't know what business is going in yet, I assume, correct? I mean, I'm trying to figure out how you walk this through. Is it during the permit operation? How do you ensure that a backflow is put where it's supposed to be?
Yeah, James can help us out through the plan check process that we go through, because every business, they start their processing with the city, but then the city coordinates and has the developer coordinate with the district for water and sewer services.
Thank you, General Manager. That's exactly correct, Director Martin. So basically, any commercial, basically non-residential or irrigation customer has a backflow, regardless of what type of business they have. That's part of, and that's true in our existing ordinance, and that's true with this new ordinance. As far as from a practical application standpoint, there's no real difference from the, I guess, the conditioning side of the house. When they go to a city, whether it's a tenant improvement or it's a new development, there's a backflow in the commercial component. They have a separate, usually they have a separate meter, they have a backflow, and it's a separate connection. So even the smart built houses, where we have residential's up top and commercials down below, they have a separate meter with a backflow. So, because a lot of times we don't know what's coming, whether it's going to be a restaurant or an accounting office or a dry cleaner. A lot of times they don't know who's going to end up, taking residence in that commercial space. So the backflow is there, and it's been part of our policy since I've been here. And with the old ordinance and new ordinance makes no difference as far as how we apply it. The 150 or so, they were typically older units prior to backflows being required, prior to being a state requirement. And most of those were, or they were converted, there was some other type of use and they converted later. Before we had a tenant improvement cooperation program with the city where tenant improvements would happen and the district would know about it.
On the reality side, a business, they need to be in compliance because we need to protect the water supply. I understand, I get that. My question is for a business that's already existing, to have someone come out and install a backflow protector and a cage and all that's necessary, what kind of cost are you looking at?
Well, it depends on the size. So large backflows are quite expensive, and smaller backflows are relatively inexpensive. I don't know if you guys have talked about installation costs. I know that it's hard for me to give you an exact figure because they've changed over the years, but for a 2-inch backflow, which is a fairly large backflow, it's going to be a new built location where they don't have to deal with existing structures. It's going to be in the $3,000 to $4,000 range typically. But of course, when you have large multifamily units with internal loop systems, for example, if you have an area that has maybe a big condo and they route 3 or 4 different meters into one big backflow, the fire protection backflow system, that's a 6-inch. Those could be $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 depending on the size. But those are also a condition of not only a state requirement, our requirement, a city requirement, and a fire district requirement. The big ones that you typically see around town, those big backflows, typically they're fire protection. Not all of them, most of them. The backflows that, the smaller ones that you're talking about here specifically and asking questions on are the more use backflows for commercial. And those are typically smaller.
Thank you, James. Maybe I should have actually asked Jim, because you've installed a couple of these.
Standard 3/4-inch meter, $500, and I have in 45 years never put in a commercial industrial facility that wasn't required a backflow, and it's all part of the building cost, and
Okay,
Bob's your uncle.
thank you.
John, is part of the program notifying the backflow device owners when they're due for recertification?
Yes. We send them a notice, and they have 30 days to comply. If they don't comply, then we send them a second notice.
Thank you. I had noticed you said there are approximately 150 that were in non-compliance. And so when I was reading through this report, on page 89, it talks about inadequate protection for the degree of hazard which exists, or improper sizing for new fire system requirements. So would that be a way someone is not in non-compliance, or of the 150, for example, they had an old building and now the fire code is different, or the hazards have changed? Or is that just, these samples are just examples of why you replace them?
Those are examples, yes. and-
Of non-compliance?
Yeah, and the 150, I believe, just don't have them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
The
they don't
150
have
that
it.
we have identified.
And then I was wondering if you could also, why do we, what is the difference? I couldn't, reading it, it didn't make sense to me. Why do you have air gap separation, or is this beyond you? Air gap separation besides the reduced pressure? You have two different kinds. And I didn't know what they, I just was curious if,
The device that he passed around, that's an actual device.
okay,
An air gap is an actual break.
between the,
So think of a hose
Mhm.
pouring into a cup, you
Okay.
have to have a gap. If it was in the cup, now you have back siphonage.
I
possible.
see,
So
okay.
you have to have an air gap, so that's
and
the.
is that on all of them, or is that on specific?
The air gap?
Mhm.
We don't have very, really.
So
the
there's a
only air
specific
gap-
reason
Yes.
for that?
Oh, yes,
Those are the highest hazard
yes.
situations.
Okay, that's,
About the only time we allow air gap is on construction meters, where they're using them just to fill trucks, where they're never actually connecting.
connected, okay, well, that explains, 'cause I read it, and then on the page 86, you have listed 33 or some plus uses that are so all of these hospitals, laboratories, dental offices, veterinarians, taxidermists, sand and gravel plants, all of these types of businesses require backflow.
Yes.
So how many backflows do we send letters, owners, do we send letters to?
We have over 3,000 in the
3,000.
district. Yes,
Wow.
probably pushing up to 35, 4,000.
Well, I'm grateful we don't have to replace them at our cost.
Yes.
My goodness. All right. And that is the state requirement you said, as well as
Yes.
ours and the state?
Once a year, they have to be tested.
Thank you for clarifying.
Uh-huh.
Director Murray?
So now I'm gonna take the opposite side of that. Does $2.50 cover your costs?
Find that thing?
Is the money good?
Sorry to bring it up, but I have to.
Good.
Sorry, I can't shake this cough. Yes. The short answer is yes. Thank you. $2.50 comes with $30 a year. And the fee that we pay, we have the third-party administering it. We will have at the beginning of next month. And what we're going to do is the person who's having the backflow tested will pay the tester, which is another third party that they contact. We don't test any. The tester submits the test results to the third party. The third party gives us a list of devices that were tested. They also do all the data maintenance and all the notifications, all the letters. They also handle all the customer service calls too, so that they're not coming in here unless it's advanced, then it will go to Gina. When we get that list of the devices that were tested, there's an amount, almost $13 per device, that comes out of the money that we've collected that we would go and pay the third party.
Okay. How many do we have out in service right now?
30,000, yeah.
Over 3,000.
Over 3,000. So that covers all of our employee costs. That covers everything.
A lot of the duties performed were extremely time-consuming, paper administrative type of work. And getting paper test copies, entering the data into the computer, printing out letters, mailing letters, we farmed all that out.
Okay.
And the admin cost for all of that is $500 a year to this third party.
Okay. So we're making money.
Pardon?
We're making money.
Since we're starting in May, with this third party, we need to see where we're gonna end up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And tell me just one more time, what are the steps? You send out a notice of compliance. 30 days, you send out another notice, then what happens?
If they still don't comply, then we send them out a notice of disconnection for non-compliance, and those are usually hand-delivered to the company. So if it's, you're the tenant and he's the owner, we're now taking it to you saying, you're gonna be out of water, so hopefully you can get him to take care of the situation before service is terminated.
And have we had to disconnect that many?
I have not had any since I've started doing it. I know it's rare because we don't like to do it, but usually when we get to the point where we're taking it to the on-site person, then they realize it's serious. So they do comply.
Thank you very much.
We've had to do disconnections for other reasons, but not related to the backflow.
Correct.
How many devices do we own for district facilities? You know offhand?
I don't have that number.
I was wondering, who, do we test those ourselves?
We test them ourselves.
Okay.
We can get you that number.
Yeah, that's fine, thanks. Okay, any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve and adopt the rules and regulations governing cross-connection control. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries unanimously. Okay.
Yes.
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 Are we ready for us to
Oh, I'm
proceed?
sorry. I thought you were getting ready, Tom.
All eyes are on
Take it
you.
away.
Thank you.
I'll just give it real quick before Tom jumps in. So the item before you is kind of the next installment on the update of the cost of service study and the rate model that we've been developing. We've been providing updates at the finance committee meetings, at board meetings, and at board workshops. So we're trying to make sure that the board is fully informed of the steps that we're going on. So we want to make sure that there's no surprises at the end, that we kind of check in at every step of the way. At some point in time, we will have all the data pieces that we need, and we will be presenting recommended rates. But what you're going to see is pretty close approximation based on the information we have right now. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tom.
Thank you, General Manager Broom. President Althorpe, members of the board, starting on page 96 of your packet, there's a staff report followed by the draft cost of service study and then the actual rate model. Today's presentation, what we'll be doing is just going over that draft, keeping in mind that it's not a rate recommendation. The biggest component of it we still don't have. We just recently got some information from San Diego County Water Authority on rates. About 78% of the revenue requirement, at least with the placeholder we have in there now, is this wholesale rate. So it's a big component missing. But what we're trying to do is get everything ready so it's good to go as soon as we get those numbers and drop them in, and then have you aware and buying off on the methodologies, the calculations, the process, and the presentations we've been making to the board. Today's goal is to get board consensus to move forward with a legal review by our general counsel at this point, if you're comfortable with what we're showing you now. We also may want to have another set of eyes, possibly a peer review or a rate consultant, take a look at this just to get, nobody's going to give an opinion. That's what I found out about calling around to attorney firms that specialize in this. But, maybe another rate consultant just to give it another set of eyes and get that comfort level. So that's what we'll be looking for, consensus today from the board.
Director Martin.
Yes.
Quick question, Tom, I'm sorry. The last cost of service study that we did was when?
It started in 2015, ended in 2016. That was the one that was not adopted by Black and Beach.
Okay, and the one
And the
prior
one
to that?
before that was 2013 by Black and Beach, and that was adopted.
2013.
Accepted, I should say.
And was it a cost of service and rate structure, or were they separated?
The one in 2013 was just a cost of service study for both water and sewer. But the board had recommended a slight change in the structure where they carved out the 5 units, the first 5 units of water, and all of a sudden we had 4 tiers instead of 3. It ended up being a slight change in the structure, but, just that one change, just that carve out of an additional tier.
I guess I'm saying, do we normally add the two of those together, cost of service and rate structure, as one, or do we do them separately?
It'd normally be as one. If you were contemplating a rate structure change, you'd want to do it at the same time.
Okay,
Yeah.
so normally we do it at the same time.
Yes,
We make it one study.
yes, yeah. Those are the only 2 studies we want outside to do. Usually we do them in-house. Okay, so for today, we're going to look at the process, and this is kind of like a table of contents too. The process of the rate study started out with planning, identifying objectives. In January, when we started off the process, we presented to you and the objectives, and we'll go over those. And then we projected demand. That's one of the first things you have to do is project demand. And that simultaneously, Finance Manager Fusco and his staff have been developing the budget at the same time that the cost of service study has been developed. And then an estimate of water supply costs. We have to use some type of estimate as we go through, and we're really close with the Water Authority to get no supply costs from them. And then determine customer classes and tier breaks. We've done that, and determine allocation percents. This is to be able to allocate costs to each tier of commodity and to the ready-to-serve charge. And then after that's all allocated, to calculate rates. So the objectives that we had were to provide rates and a structure to the board for approval. We're hoping for June 7th to be able to do that. And the other objective was to provide 1 or 2 alternative structures if practical. And actually we did that at the very beginning. We looked at a couple of different possibilities for rate structures and got some input and guidance from the board. We kept, like General Manager Bruham said, keeping you apprised was an objective as well, and it's a benefit when you do this study internally, because if you had an outside consultant do it, they might throw a couple of meetings in, like at the end to come, but as we were developing, we were with the board and getting direction, so that worked out well. Alternatives presented are legal and defensible. We're very familiar with the California Constitution, Article 13D, Section 6B, otherwise known as 218, are the substantive requirements of that. So we had those in mind as we went through. Court cases that interpret that Constitution for us. And then the M1 manual, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but the M1 manual is industry guidance, not the highest authority for rate setting, but it's one everybody uses, and we did as well. We provide a thorough and understandable administrative record, and we've been doing that every time we meet with the board. Every item in that board packet becomes part of the administrative record, and then finally, when the board is asked to adopt the actual rate study, which June 7th hopefully is the date we'll be doing that right along with the budget, that becomes part of the administrative record. And we have a strong, even before that, we've been building up a very strong administrative record. Some of the alternatives presented, that they satisfy the mission statement, water and wastewater specialists providing exceptional and sustainable services, and backing up, and how do we achieve that objective? For that mission statement, we have objectives in our strategic plan. For example, for the finance one, consider and adopt water and sewer rates that support the operation and maintenance of the district and adequately fund replacement and upgrades required to ensure service and reliability. And so, in doing so, the revenue requirement that we've identified includes both the O&M part and a provision for capital too. So we've done that through the budget process and creating this revenue requirement. Nothing arbitrary. That's a part of making it legal and defensible, particularly with some of the challenges to other rate structures. And we're very careful to go through this and have nothing arbitrary. Everything's based on historical trends. Assumptions are based on historical trends, or something concrete like the peaking factors we'll look at later. And then finally, to establish a revenue requirement that exhausts all efforts to cut costs, but still maintain or improve our current level of service and workforce engagement. And that's what Finance Manager Fusco and his staff has been doing through the budget process. And it's kind of simultaneous as we go through. So for the guidance and making sure we're in touch with legal, I have developed, and I will include in the next draft that you'll look at, a law and guidance review that kind of starts out with this hierarchy of authority. At the pinnacle is the California Constitution. There's no authority for rate setting in California higher than that. And then, like I said, the common law cases, we looked and kept in mind a few of the ones that are frequently cited that help interpret that California Constitution. And then the M1 manuals is probably used the most, even though it's not the highest authority, but it's used the most in industry. It's a American Waterworks Association publication, and we've followed that as well going through. So like I said, one of the first things we do is a demand projection. The 3 columns over to the right look at how many meters have increased each year, what's the percentage of increase in meters, and that's an indication of growth, right? Growth in our agency. And then also the M&I demand increase at the very right of this table. We looked at the bounce back years. In other words, you know, we had these big cutbacks, you see the big negative numbers, and then we bounced back, you know. So what we assumed for that is a 3%. 0.3% of that is growth. We looked at the recent years with meter growth and carved that out and made that an assumption. And ag, unfortunately, we had trees cut back and people, we literally had less ag customers than we did before, so we don't imagine we'll ever be where we were before that. So we just assumed that would level off and that construction wouldn't, you know, conservatively wouldn't peak at, like it did here at 145, it would be somewhere in between that. So those were the assumptions for the demand, and that was important to establish that ahead of the time as we went through the study and through the budget as well. So you'll see the budget document and the cost of service document with the same demand projection. And then for the tier structure, proposed changes to that, we are proposing the meter size, and we've gone over that before. It's what we use existing, but the changes to that, it's still by meter size. What we have now is a 5-unit, like I said, it was a carve-out. Every meter, every customer type gets the first 5 units at wholesale cost. And then the tier 2 limit is 90% of, and this is when it was, you can see when it was put together, it's 90% of average pre-2009 drought use. So when we actually developed this was 2008, 2009. I think it was approved in 2010. And then the tier 3 limit captures 90% of the total use in each meter size category. And we need to update those, right? That's based on pretty old data, and that's one of the purposes of the study as well. So what we're proposing, and we've brought this to the board and got your consensus on this, but the tier 1 limit is the minimum average use. We looked at current data to find out that. And then the tier 2 limit is the maximum average use. So we have these tiers established, just 3 tiers. And just to illustrate the difference in the tiers, this bar across the top, at the very top of it illustrates where we are currently with our rates. The second bar is what we're proposing. The rates are placeholders again. It's not what the rates we're proposing, but just to give you an idea. So for example, somebody using 5 units of water in the current system, it's all at tier 1, as well as in a proposed system. If they use another unit of water, if they go up to 6 in the current system, 5 units are at the $3.08 to tier 1 rate, and then 1 unit is at the tier 2 rate. Under the new system, all of it's in the tier 1. And then you just go across the number line and see that, for example, if you use 19 units in the old system, you kind of go into an existing system. You go into tier 3, and but not in the proposed system. And then the actual tier structures, existing and proposed, are at the bottom of that. Okay. Any questions there before I move on? A lot of stuff we already looked at, but it's just kind of summarizing and bringing it back to you in one chunk here. You know, why the meter size categories? Customers with larger meters pay a higher rate to serve. They paid for greater capacity in the system, and we don't just give large meters. You have to apply, and we have to show justification of the demand. And that's what they've done. If we lumped a larger meter in with a smaller meter in one category of customers, it's possible that they would be penalized for using capacity they paid for. So that's why we have the meter size now. The M1 manual states customer classes by meter size are fine as long as you show that they are homogeneous by meter size. And we've presented that to you too for recent data, 2015 and 2016. We looked at 2 years, so we were sure it wasn't an anomaly. And we grouped customers by meter size, and we grouped customers by customer type, did standard deviation calculations, and it showed that usage was more homogeneous by meter size. VID and OMWD use, for their irrigation meters, use meter size for tier breaks. And there's one other one, I can't remember which, I think I found another one in the south that does it as well.
So what are the other agencies? Are they by customer class?
They're hybrid, they're all over the board. Most of them are hybrid. Most of them take their residential and break it up into 2 or 3 tiers, and then their commercial is 1 tier. Usually ag is 1 tier. Ag is always 1 tier for everybody else. That's what predominantly found. A couple of them, Ramona and Valley Center, are still on a flat per unit, no tiers, no need for customer classifications. So. Okay, and this is a real complicated page, but it's an important page because it kind of sums up how we allocate costs to the different tiers. There are 2 factors we use. One is the peaking factors, and the other one is the demand assumed in each tier. So the peaking factors come from our master plan. It's not an arbitrary number. It's actually our peaking factors for this district. It's not an industry statistic. It's actually for our district. And we assign a factor of 1 to the average demand. The maximum daily demand is 1.9 times the average demand. So we assign a factor of 1.9 for the maximum daily demand. Maximum hour demand is 3 times more than an average hour demand, so we assign a factor of 3 to that. Why is that important? Because some facilities are sized for just average demand. Some facilities are sized for max day demand. Some facilities are sized for max hour demand. And the reason why that's important is we incur costs of operations more for these facilities because they're sized bigger. So, for example, on storage, treatment, and pumping equipment, we size those for max demand. So you can see across, we combine the factors of demand and peaking for that. So we assign 52%. 52% is 1 of the 1.9, or the other, the 47% is 0.9 of the 1.9. So anyway, that's how that works mathematically. So when we go to the actual big allocation sheets, we already have the percentages ready to go. I know that's kind of complicated, but that's part of the technical. That's the beautiful thing about doing it in-house. We can bring you in and actually show you the calculations.
Tom, do you have a feel for how these peaking factors have changed historically? Have they moved in one direction or another? Such as like max day demand?
Do you know, since you've been here with the last one, I know they didn't change from the last master plan, but the one before that, they may have changed.
They've been staying fairly consistent overall. A lot of the peaking factors are really driven by the fire flows. So even as average demands have come down, the fire flow requirements set forth by the fire districts have gone up. And that's had an offsetting effect as far as our peaking factors, because it's max day plus fire flow is kind of the peak numbers that we've sized through the pipes and tanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, James. Okay, then we have capital requirements. So remember I said at the beginning, to satisfy our mission statement and our strategic plan objectives, we looked at both O&M and capital to make sure we're recovering enough to provide for capital as well. So what you have on the top is, and this is from our preliminary, now you have, by the way, in your board packet, preliminary budget numbers in your draft cost of service study. And this is why we average capital. Because if we looked at each year and actually came up with a rate each year, in fiscal year 2018 it's 3.7 million. Fiscal year 2019 it's 3.9 million. Then it goes down to 2 million. Then it goes up to 2.5 million. And it's 0. So, you'd have a rate going like this. So what we do is average that out And then the reason why you're seeing investment earnings, and that's investment earnings and something else in there too, but annexation and property tax, property tax. Because that offsets the capital revenue requirement. So we average it and then smooth it on that same trend you see there. Those numbers for property tax and investment earnings are not yet calculated for the budget, so they'll change. So that establishes an amount each year to put into our model, but then how do we spread that out amongst the different meters and the different commodity tiers? And instead of, there's 80, it could be 60 to 80 projects in that 2.3 million. There's so many, so we're not going to look at each individual project. Instead, we look at the district overall. That's all of the book value of our assets in place. So we look at that and then spread them out based on the book value of our different assets, our pumping compared to total, water treatment compared to total, and then use those same percentages that I came up with in the slide for peaking to spread that out. So that's how the capital numbers are spread. And then we get to the actual cost allocation, and the first thing we did is associate our sources of supply with demand in each tier. So, for example, 2018, we're assuming 14,000 acre-foot demand. And in order to spread it amongst tiers 1, 2, and 3, we actually have real data from our billing system, over 220,000 bills, data that we plug in that Mike Arthur does in the consumptive use model, putting in the 6 units for the 3/4 inch meter and the 16 units for the 1 inch meter, puts in all this data, it's a what if analysis, and then how much does tier 1 capture out of the actual use in the district. And that's how we come up with those, spread those numbers. Then we apply the unbilled water factor to it to come up with the necessary production to meet that 14,000 acre feet in demand. And that's what we spread. OMWD is the least expensive water. We try to base load on that, maximize that as much as possible. And one of the reasons why we have the OMWD contract is to get a good deal on the water. And so that's allocated all to tier 3. Going over to tier 1. Going over to tier 3, the reason why we have desal is to increase reliability and to look for other sources of water in the event that we have to cut back. We have a drought-proof source of water. If we didn't have increasing demands or we weren't worried about people not conserving, we wouldn't be looking at the desalinated water, but we did. So that's burdened. The highest users are burdened with that most expensive water. And what's left from that demand is over in tier 2, and then predominantly our San Diego County Water Authority water is in tier 2. And the numbers you see, the cost per acre foot, are preliminary numbers actually. These are before. We just got preliminary numbers from Water Authority for some of the commodity rates, and so that 1,286 is now 1,309. So that 1,286 was a placeholder, but it's gone up a little bit. And that's how we calculate the purchase costs that we allocate to the different tiers. What I showed on this slide too was the total cost to recover, at least in this placeholder. It's not the final budget numbers, and it's not the water costs yet, but you can see roughly it's going to be about 91% of our tier 1 water is really passed through water costs from OMWD and from San Diego County Water Authority. And this is why, and you hear a lot from the public when people say, you're raising rates because I'm conserving water. We didn't have to raise rates because we had a drop in demand. The reason why we had to raise rates the last time was because the desal cost was increased. But because of that, because we recover costs, we try to recover our fixed costs with a fixed charge and our commodity costs with the commodity charge. When we have a demand increase, there's only 9% on that tier 1 that we're really short. So it worked out very well for us to have the stable revenue source and recover just mostly only the commodity from the Water Authority on the tiers 1, 2, and 3. So after we calculate water costs and spread that out to the different tiers, then we look at our budget. Budget's the starting point to calculate our revenue requirement. We have the budget and the capital replacement you see here on the left column, but then we also have other revenue that we're gonna offset and reduce our revenue requirement by. So we have the surcharges on pumping, for example, the latent lock fees that we collect, the backflow that we talked about, that we collect, and we offset our costs there. The biggest one is property tax to offset our capital, and that's what we do here. So we have those offsets, back them out, and then we have our revenue requirement on the right-hand column. And next is to spread that revenue requirement to the different charges that we have. Our ready-to-serve charge, our commodity charges, each tier of that, and then fire protection, we charge for a fire service meter, and those are the costs we recover there. And from there, take those numbers that you saw on the bottom, and now we go to ready-to-serve. We take the revenue requirement and look at the number of billing units. So for the ready-to-serve charge, there's two components of that. One we look at is the meter equivalence. So in other words, a 3/4 inch meter is 1 meter, but a 1 inch meter is like 1.5 meters, the equivalent of 1.5. A 2 inch is, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but 5. That's on the next slide. But those are all the meter equivalents we'll bill during the year, a total of 389,000 meter equivalents. There's another component that we allocate to ready-to-serve. That's the cost of generating a bill. It doesn't matter what size your meter is. The customer service costs and the meter reading costs amounts to about $2.51 to process a bill. So that's just divided by the number of bills that we process in a year. That's what the 258,000 is. And then the fire protection is a little different. We for the service line, if it's a 4-inch line, it's 4 billing units. We bill per inch of service line on that. And those are the billing units for the whole year. So we divide them up, and just to follow it through to calculate the final rate. Now, this is not the final rate, this is just the draft, like I said. You have the meter equivalents times that unit cost that we just came up with in the previous slide, and then you add the bill to it. Every time you process a bill, we're recovering $2.51, and that comes up with your total meter charge. And then for commodity, it's a little bit easier. What do we allocate to tier 1s, tier 2, and tier 3 for a revenue requirement? And just divide that by the number of units of demand that we're assuming in a year. That's how the cost of service study came together. The important part over here too is when are the effective dates for this. So July 1 is the first, would be the great effective date, but because of the requirements in 218, we've got to have notice to the public 45 days in advance of the public hearing. So that's going to get pushed out a little bit. Our July 1 date, when we normally have the ready-to-serve charge and the sewer charges become effective, we're shooting for September 1. We think that'll be enough time for the notice and such. So for September 1 will be the first effective date. The second one would be 2018's commodity charge. The reason why we do commodity, there's a little bit of history on that. In the old days, the Water Authority and all the agencies, everything was fiscal year. Everything was fiscal year. And back in the old days, the highest increase you would get to wholesale water was $5 an acre foot, and that translated to 1 penny a unit of water. It wasn't a big deal. But then all of a sudden, those increases got bigger, and the water agencies were asking the Water Authority, wow, right in the middle of summer, we're having these big increases. So they said, okay, we'll make it effective on calendar year. And then most of the agencies followed suit on that. That's why you see different effective dates. Of course, we're going to try to get a fiscal year to match our budget, but same thing for our customers. We don't want an increase happening on the commodity side when their usage is the highest. So that's why you see the different effective dates. So 2018, January 1 for bills sent out after February, that would be effective. We're also going to recommend that this include the 2018-19 fiscal year for the ready-to-serve and sewer charge, and 2019 commodity, and then also the fiscal year 19-20 charges. And what that will do is 2 years from now, when we're before you going through this rate increase, we'll already have a rate set for July 1, and we'll be looking for the 2020 commodity rate to be the first rate effective. And that way we will know exactly what the Water Authority's rate is and before we actually implement rates. That's going to be the proposed schedule, and that's what we'll recommend as staff for effective dates for the 218 notice. And that's the next step. Hopefully by May 3rd or 2nd, the next board meeting. I'll have an update for you. I don't know if I'll have all the rates from the Water Authority yet, but certainly we'll have a draft 218 notice for you just to approve and form, so that's ready to go. Just looking for consensus to move forward with taking the cost of service study that you see in your board packet, General Counsel Scott and his office to give a detailed review of it, and then possibly to see if I can get a peer-to-peer review or a consultant firm to give me a second set of eyes without having to go through a huge RFP process or a lot of cost.
Parker, any?
Who gets the fire protection bills? You have the fire,
Oh, there's businesses that have a separate meter for fire, if they have a separate meter for fire. So there's a lot of, I don't know how many there are, 468, I think, so it's about 500 fire meters out there.
and I thought fire water was free.
The water's free, that's the ready to serve charge. Because even though we don't bill, but we require the fire districts to let us know how much water they use for testing and fire suppression. So we have to read the meters anyway, and we have to maintain service lines and meters.
Okay, thank you.
There's a little less than 500 of them out there.
So in this scenario, you're suggesting that we have 3 different rate increases in the next year. September, January, and July again, 3 different rate increases.
Yeah, the rate increases are twice a year, once in July. It's typically once in July, but we're gonna be late on this one because we gotta send a, notice out and give time for the public to look at it. So this July one becomes September. Then each January and each July after that. January is the commodity, and then July is ready to serve and sewer.
So the 218 process that we're sending out is showing July 17th, 18th rate increase, January 1st rate increase, and 18-19 July 1st rate increase. Is that correct?
Yes, and we'll be recommending January 1, 2019, 2.5 years. The January 1, 2019 for ready to serve and sewer. And then, I'm sorry, that's commodity. January 1, 2019 is commodity. And then July 1, 2019 is ready to serve and sewer. And that'll put us on track then for just 2 years, however long the board wants to go out every 2 years. We'll have a couple of scenarios for you for May 3rd or May 2nd, whenever the next board meeting is, for the board to kind of consider and see how they want to lay it out on a 218, or how many years. The cost of service study goes out 5, so the board has discretion. How many years do you want to go out? This is just a staff recommendation.
Just had a curious question. You ever hear of doing a rate increase once a year and covering everything?
We could do that, but like I mentioned the history before, if we said, let's do it all on July 1, that's a pretty big hit right in the middle of summer when the usage is highest to our customers. And then again, if we did it all on January 1, well, our budget is based on a fiscal year, so that's why there's 2.
But that's certainly an option that the board has, if you want to consolidate it in so there's only one rate increase per year, to include both components.
I don't know how
Yeah.
John Q. Public, as I was 5 years ago, would understand the 218 when it comes to your door anyhow. We're told that you have to have so much legalese in it that very few people really understand it. So the normal guy doesn't get it at all. To show 3 increases, separate dates, separate times, it seems to me that that's just foolish.
And I have real concerns with just the number of rate increases every 6 months. I think it's a real problem with the public perception. I mean, I'm used to doing 1 rate increase a year on July 1 and just estimating what the commodity increase will be halfway through the year.
That's,
So I
the
don't think
cost of
it's a-
service is set up pretty easy to do that, if that was the desire of the board. Because we look at fiscal years and calendar years in there, so it's actually pretty flexible.
And we can bring those options forward to the board for the consideration. The board has to approve the 218 notice, so that's an opportunity for the board to weigh in as how do we want to notice these.
And that'll be June 7th, right with the cost of service. We'll probably be, approving the format and actually by then the content of the 218 notice. But we'll bring the 218 for format, and that would be a good time to discuss, you know, the direction of that the board wants to take for
First
that
meeting.
as well.
That'll be the first meeting in May.
Yes, I'll be ready for that.
Director Sinani?
Now, the mobile home parks that have one meter that feed their neighborhood,
Mhm.
and then there's not individual meters on the actual units, what meter size are they typically
Inch and a half, 1 inch and inch and a half are the most common ones.
for the whole park?
Correct.
Can you give me an example of the type of company or industry that may have something larger, like 2 or greater than 2?
Size
Yeah.
meter? Well, there are, the mobile homes are inch and a half. There are a couple of larger multi-families that have 6-inch meters. I can't remember, is Gina still here? She would know what the accounts are, with 6-inch meters. 2-inch meters, I don't know, James, can you?
Many of the large and newer multi-home family units have inch and a half and 2-inch meters. Institutes, schools, parks, those areas, they have 3-inch, 4-inch, maybe 6-inch meters. Some of the older multi-family units, like the ones in La Costa, for example, there's one that has 6-inch meters, but they have they're grandfathered because they have a combined both water, irrigation, and fire suppression all on site, so that's why they have 6-inch meters. Anything more newer would have a separate fire service line, so the meter sizes really go down.
So the multifamily neighborhoods that are just to take this one, it's on a 6 unit, or the 6-inch meter, are you, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're charging them the high water users, if you will, the price of our desal. You're taking the desal cost and you're charging that to the folks who use the most water, right? So if you have a multi-unit neighborhood that's on a 6-inch meter,
Yeah.
they're gonna be, the whole neighborhood's gonna be using, it will be a high use.
Probably not, actually. If you look
Okay.
at the slide I just put up,
Mhm.
with the new proposed structure, it's kind of similar to the other one. Look at a greater than 2-inch, they actually get an allotment of 430 units at Tier 1. So they get a bigger allotment. 430 units at Tier 1, they get 1,190 units at Tier 2. So typically, they don't go into Tier 3 too much because they have vacancies. They're not always using that capacity. A lot of that capacity is for fire flow on that meter. So actually, the multifamilies go into Tier 3, the highest tier, less than other ones do.
Tom, you may want to clarify that at the very top of that exhibit, that's just for a small meter. That's
Oh,
not.
yeah, this is just a
that's not
5-inch meter.
Yeah, so look at the table at the bottom, not the
Correct.
bar
The
charts
table
at
on
the
the
top.
bottom is what I'm showing that.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. So I just want to make sure that there's a lot of multifamily neighborhoods and mobile home neighborhoods in our service area, and I want to make sure that whatever we end up implementing here as a district, that we're not unfairly punishing them because they're on a master meter, for lack of a better way to put it.
Correct. Yeah. Actually, you're going to see a decrease for multifamily because the additional unit, what we're proposing is to come down quite a bit.
Well, and so to follow up on that, then, if I was using my calculator here on my phone while you were talking, kind of going through some scenarios, it seems to me that the kind of the typical single-family home too, that maybe on the less than 1-inch meter that uses the 8 to 12 units, on average 10 units is what I used for my calculations, may not necessarily, either will see a very almost insignificant increase or a reduction themselves. So if I'm understanding this correctly, we're really trying to capture, this change is really going to impact the folks who use, a lot of water. And that's also concerning because those are businesses now, is what in public agencies like school districts and Cal State San Marcos and others, right?
Unless their size, like Cal State San Marcos meters are huge.
Okay.
You know, so they do get a bigger allotment.
So, I'd like to, maybe not, tonight's not the night, but, you know, I'd like to see kind of some additional information as to what we would expect. Maybe we bring in some real-life examples of,
Actually, I have one.
oh, you do, good, okay.
They're
Like
on
XYZ restaurant, and, you know,
This is with the placeholder numbers, but, and you'll see it when you have the real numbers too. On page, rate impacts on page 153 of your board packet. So what this is looking at, this is just water, not sewer, but it's looking at the combination of the change in the meter rate and the change in the commodity on different meter sizes. And you see ag at 1 inch and 1.5 inch. You see multifamily at 1 inch, 1.5 inches, because those are the most common size ag meters and multifamily meters. And just average scenarios, or I did scenarios with one at a low use, one at an average use, one at a high use, and one at a very high use. So that very high use one is probably people using more than they're supposed to be for their meter size, but the very high one is the one that captures most of the decel.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
The tier structure comparison, and I know the proposed structure, the composed rates are not necessarily the proposed rates,
Correct.
but we're guessing they're pretty close.
Again, this was what we estimated a year ago to be 2 years out, so they're not necessarily
So
close.
they're not close.
But they really are placeholders from last year's budget. The ones, the ones in here, the budget is the preliminary budget, but the rates we still don't know yet.
Okay, so the top line is our current structure and rates, 308, 412.
Correct.
The proposed structure, 330, 435, is the one that we didn't accept last year.
No.
No,
It's kind of close to what we think they're gonna be this year?
Based on the numbers that we've put in so far, that's what's being,
correct. Yeah,
Projected.
but again, 78% of the cost is, the revenue requirement is the cost of water, so we don't have that in yet.
but we have estimates in for
We
that.
have
It's
a
not like we
placeholder in
left it
Correct,
out.
there's a placeholder in there.
But it
This
just
was-
is off by $20 an acre foot.
Yeah, the one I had was, right, it was off by 23, or something like 20-something bucks an acre.
Which is minuscule when it comes down to $3.30 and $4.
Sure, yeah, when you divide that up by the number of units, that's cents, yeah.
Okay, so the numbers we're looking at there are relatively close?
Yeah, for the 2000, did I have them for all? Oh, I didn't bring with me the other ones, but for the 2018, it's, like I said, it's just a little bit short. It really should be 29 bucks more, or 23 bucks more, whatever it was.
Okay,
Yeah,
but it's roughly the right numbers.
yeah, it'll be cents higher per unit, yeah, 4 or 5 cents higher per unit.
Thank you. Rick Redmond.
Okay, just, what we're trying to do today then is, we're not determining the rates. This is all about, we've agreed on this methodology for the cost of service.
The way the cost of service study is laid out, the
And how-
methodologies, calculations. Yep.
Okay, well, I don't think everyone's had the time to read the whole thing, but I am going to applaud the entire staff that was in this, because I have finished reading it just before the meeting, and it is excellent, and it is detailed, and you went through an amazing history of where we were and where we are, and there's I could not believe how it takes a bit of work, but you have really shown every single cost to what the service was, and why we would choose 3 tiers, and why we would go to tiers. And I was amazed that you would get down into the percentages, and some things went lower and some things went higher based on those percentages. So I hope everyone will have a chance to read this, because it is an amazing document. And whether the rates are happy rates or not, I have to say, I think the methodology is certainly backed, and I would like to propose that we do direct. I mean, I know this is just direction, it's not a vote, but my feeling is we direct the legal counsel to perform the detailed legal review we want and move forward with this. And then the next time round, we'll get to decide on how many increases we want to do in a
Right.
time period, or what the actual rates turn out to be when we have the real numbers. But I don't know how you guys found the time to do this and all the other things that I've seen going to the finance committee meetings and our budget workshops, but it is an excellent, I would be very proud personally to have you give this to a court.
Thank you.
So,
Director
Yeah.
Martin.
I don't want to be challenged, but I'd be proud to do that. So I just wanted to say thank you, it's very amazing.
Thank you. Director Martin.
Just very quickly, thank you for the report. I'm still waiting for the ta-da moment, because when that moment hits, it might be a horse of a different color. So I want to make sure but do I think staff has done their job? We're a platinum team here, I believe, the best in the business, and I would expect that. You've lived up to that expectation. But I don't want any direction taken until we see the final ta-da moment. That can make all the difference.
Yeah, and just to let you know, I do have a page in here that, after the numbers are in, there are alternatives. So it might be staff's recommendation, but it's ultimately the board. And then if you give me a number, it's pretty easy to calculate and see what the hit is to reserves. And that's why this one page is in the study, in the rate model itself, to be able to do that. So this is what I'm asking for, is just a consensus to review the methodologies and the calculations and the process. But you'll get that final shot at the rates too.
If I could, maybe Director Martin, if you can maybe help me understand what the ta-da moment is. One of the points of us continuously updating the board is to make sure there is no surprise. At some point in time, we will give you our final recommendation. Is that the moment that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
That's always the ta-da moment. It's
Yeah.
like, ta-da. It's like in the past, we've had moments where it's gonna be $27, but we cut out so we made it 25.
Yeah.
And we've had those ta-da moments, which I don't believe in.
Yeah.
Just give us the facts.
Yeah.
And I don't think we'll have them this time because you're here.
Right.
But I just want to know, I want to know the final numbers before we
Right.
say, send it to the attorney, let's send it anyway, we have final numbers.
Okay.
How do you, you have all the ingredients of the cake, but until it's finished and it comes out of the oven, you don't know what's gonna happen.
Right. Okay, thank
So
you.
that's my idea for tonight.
So are we in agreement with the direction?
Yes, I mean, I am, that we need to have the legal people look at it and make sure we don't get a ta-da moment on that.
We already got a ta-da on that.
Okay.
Go for it.
Great, thank you
Thanks,
very
Tom.
much.
I've got one speaker slip, Mr. Hunsaker.
I started writing a letter describing the deficiencies of this plan. I got to 18, and that's only how far I got so far. I will present to you a couple of major issues to consider. One, there is no drought rates. Under the drought conditions, the level of service is unfairly centered on single-family dwellings. SB 814 has that. Now, if their service is curtailed, this is a violation of 218 if you continue to call them to pay more or even the same because their service is curtailed. 218 addresses the level of service. You have pump charges that are exempted. What do you do when you reduce the service to people that they paid for? And you say, well, we can't do it for the big ones, but we can really hit the single-family dwellings. It's appalling. If you're going to set up a rate structure, you make sure that you consider all exemptions that you have put in place to rationing. That would be a violation of 218, among other things. Then there's another question. The RTS, the hugely aggressive accelerators that is unfairly distributed across by meter size. Then there's a third issue. I have friends in high places and low places, and that includes the VID. I was informed that the VWD is being required under their agreement to buy more sewer capacity. The cost of this could be somewhere between $300 million and $500 million. Through the exemptions and special considerations you put in place, this could be passed on to those who do not get any benefit for the benefit of few large users. Lastly, you're supposed to be taking care of excessive water use and waste. The most water inefficient and most excessive users are multi-family dwellings. According to your figures, the average multifamily dwelling uses about 200 gallons per day. Now we'll get into that later. But I can assure you, you're setting yourself up for the biggest lawsuits none empty ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, under reports, 3.1, General Manager.
Yeah, just a few items. So at the dais there, you should have copies of 2 letters from a firm that's going to be doing our annual audit. It's Rogers, Anderson, Melody, and Scott. 2 letters. One is an initiation letter that indicates they're ready to start the process, and the other is what they call an engagement letter, which basically we have to sign to acknowledge that they're doing the work for us. That's just an informational item for the board. I was going to mention that we did get some of the commodity rates from the Water Authority, but Mr. Scaglione already mentioned that. At the recent County Water Authority General Manager meeting, we did indicate that the Table A allocation is going up over 80%, so that's good news. Be a lot of water coming through. On the website should be the third quarter CIP update. That's available online. And in August, we'll come forward and present to the board the fourth quarter CIP updates. And last item is just a reminder that tomorrow we do have a workshop regarding pump safety, starting at 5 o'clock in the board chambers. And that's all I have.
Thank you. District Legal Counsel.
Yeah, I have nothing to add.
Okay.
Quick question, Attorney, are we gonna have another update on Lake San Marcos at some point in time?
You certainly can.
Anything happening? The last we heard from you, there was something happening.
Well, I think we can come back to you, but I think it's probably more appropriate in closed session.
Great.
We could set something up.
Thank you.
Back, your pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, San Diego County Water Authority.
Well, the next meeting is next Thursday, and Chris actually was going to tell you about the sea change, and if you'll have a chance to look at this, it's an amazing, the 2016 annual report. Tomorrow morning, I'll be the delegate for the Conservation Waterwise Garden that they're part of the JPA with, and on Friday, I'll be attending the Chamber of Congressional, I'm going to forget the word, as a rep for San Diego Water Authority as well on Friday. Congressional thing, don't have my notes, so sorry.
Okay. Encina.
We had our meeting this morning, a review of the improvement projects, not anything special. Talked about the budget that's going to be moving forward and being brought back probably again to the managers and then ultimately approved at the board. The big item was I had been approached by a septic tank pumper and construction porta potty pumper to see if Encina could in fact retake what they were doing years ago and taking the waste. It's been stopped, and now they are forced to go down to La Mesa or to Temecula, and there's an opportunity for revenue from anywhere from $7 to over $1 million. So I made the motion, it was approved, we're going to do a high-level study just to see what the volumes are and what it means, and what facilities may have to be constructed, and then what the real net revenue benefit would be. So that's going to take place over the next 60 days. And that was the capital committee.
And I think that's a great idea. I would just add to that, that maybe in that negotiation, you tie in the cleanup of Lake San Marcos.
I don't know how that comes into,
It's the same parent company.
oh, yeah, well, we're talking apples and oranges, but, okay.
Talking the same guy.
Director Smith.
And thanks for the update, Director Hernandez. I just appreciate you working hard on behalf of a local business.
Thank you.
Second that. Okay, the Policy and Finance Committee have been seen we met on the 11th of April. We did a first review of the FY 2018 operating budget, and overall, it's pretty flat as far as any increase. It's about 1.6% total overall. However, VWD's portion, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about a little over 6.6%, because our flows are up as well as the sewage strength. So, and I think you're continuing to analyze.
We are. You know,
that situation.
one of the issues is that we were having problems, either construction at the lift station number 1 or at the plant, so we were diverting less flows to Meadowlark and sending more flows to Encina. And the way they calculate the operating costs, they look at the flows that are actually being processed. So our flows went up while everybody else's was going down due to conservation. So there's a temporary spike in our operating costs. I'm hopeful that in the next year or so, those costs will come back down in line with what they've historically been.
Thank you. All right, standing committees. We had a finance committee this week.
Yes, we had a finance committee this week, and we went over about all this stuff we talked about, except for that one.
Capital improvement.
Capital improvements. We went over capital improvements. James was able to give us a excellent report on the improvements that staff foresees over the next 1 year as well as up to 5 years. And also possibilities of being able to defer a few of them if push came to shove. And we'll know that after the ta-da moment.
Okay. Director Hernandez.
Again, I'm trying to set up that engineering committee to talk with Geoscience, who is the organization that's doing the groundwater study for Liebenheim, just to see what the heck they're doing and how much it might cost for Vallecitos to take that on. And I'm kind of looking for a date certain from staff and engineering, so we can get that put together. It's going to be next month.
All right, directors' reports on travel, conferences, seminars. Start with Director Snell.
Yeah, the only thing, I went to 2 things, actually. I went to Cal yesterday. I think you all were there, and we talked a little bit about Gary's presentation, but he gave a Water 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 presentation is what he called it, where he kind of went back with the history of water and then where the governor is going with his water budgets, and you guys were all there. And then I also attended the San Marcos North EDC Economic Summit at Cal State San Marcos, and that was a very informative overview of both the national economic picture, but more specifically, what's going on with North County and the types of jobs that are doing well, and perhaps some of the challenges that might come in the future with technology and robotics and everything else. And one key takeaway from a national perspective is that the lead economist from Wells Fargo he is anticipating, him and his team are anticipating that Fed interest rates are going to go up at least 2 more times this year and 3 additional times next year. So if you're going to borrow some money for either buying a house or starting a business, you may want to get to doing it.
Thank you.
I have a few reports to catch up on, as well as a couple of current. March 19th and 20th, I attended the Water Reuse Conference held here in San Diego at the Westin, which was downtown, a hotel I'd never seen before. Very nice hotel. They covered quite a few different subjects. Trussell Technologies really piqued my interest because he's a homegrown company with Amos Trussell starting it, now it's his grandson. There was a panel discussion on the Pure Water Program and how they're trying to expedite that very quickly while people are still worrying about not having water. Because I think they realize that now that we have water, it's gonna be the same thing that happened 15 years ago. People are going, what problem? We have water. And I think that's already hitting them. And that was excellent. Then on the 21st, I went to CAWA, which I think most of us were there, and listened to Dr. Brown speak. And I thought it was very interesting that little course that Vallecitos had a lot to do with, I understand, charges $5,000, and they filled up 30 seats, 35 seats, 30 seats? It's filled up for this course.
Yeah.
So my question is, where's that $150,000 go? Just curious. But that was interesting. We had some of the people that had a little discussion. I will admit that this year so far, CAWA has had better speakers than in years prior, and I can only assume that's because of the new president in charge this year, which is our own representative, Mrs. Evans. Good job.
I'm working hard.
You've had great people there.
Thank you.
Then, this month, I attended the CWPC, the California Water Policy Conference, as well as some other people did. I forget who. I did. Oh, there you go. And that was very interesting. It's the first one I had attended. A lot of information there. And they had 400 people?
Yeah.
400 or 500.
Very well
It was
attended.
packed.
Yeah.
It was packed. And the information that came about what's going on from the graduate students, listening to them talk. Oh yeah, there is a workforce coming up already. We're adding to it at the university, but there's a workforce out there coming from other universities that's not to be afraid of. And then I attended SNEDIC, San Diego North, EDC, the Economic Summit, which I have to tell you, they rivaled the Water Authority for coming out with pamphlets. 2 of them are theirs, 2017. They have some larger, Tri-City is a big part of them, as well as Wells Fargo. So they're spending buku bucks, and they come up with good economic forecasts, which I do believe help us in our forecasting, because we know what's coming, and we know what's about to come. So we have an idea of what's going on. So that was very interesting as well. And then CAWA just yesterday morning, was a great job by the doom and gloomer himself. I mean, we're all in a handbasket headed for hell, but it was a good perception to get from, if everything were to go the way the governor thinks they should, we would be in trouble. But I just have a feeling that's going to be watered down quite a bit by the time it actually hits. So it was a good conversation for Gary to have, and he certainly has the knowledge and the background for it. So thank you. I'm all caught up.
Yeah, I attended yesterday's Council of Water Utilities as well. And while Gary's a kind of a gloom and doomer, it really points to the heavy-handedness of the state as far as the additional powers that the State Water Board has been empowered to wield. So it's pretty onerous, and it's really in direct conflict with the idea that special districts locally are kind of the most efficient way to govern services. So to me, it's in direct conflict with that notion. And I also attended the California Water Policy Conference. I thought it was excellent. Jeff Keitlinger, GM at Metropolitan, kicked it off with an outstanding presentation. He's really good at giving history over the last, however much history you want in California water. And he did a particularly good job of illustrating the history from the early 90s up to this point in time and how Met has changed and evolved over that time period. There was also a lot of good discussion on from him and other speakers on the Bay Delta and the water fix project and the importance of that and kind of the hurdles that still remain to trying to get that implemented. One interesting statistic on that was that, find my notes here, they're estimating that, that the water fix, the Twin Tunnels projects is approximately $15.9 billion, $16 billion. If you amortize that over 40 years, it equates to about $175 per acre foot increase on Metropolitan's water price. So, roughly about a 10% increase. To me, that's reasonable to go ahead and make that investment in fixing the plumbing problem up there. So, very interesting. The other interesting discussion there was on water rights issues and how this conservation framework that's coming down from the state board and the governor, how that may trample water rights holders. And I think they're headed for a huge showdown legally with the first time a senior water rights holder gets his water rights cut because of mandated conservation. There's going to be some landmark legal battles over that. So that may change the situation with how much power the state board has. So it's interesting times. That's all I had.
Attended a number of the meetings that have already been discussed, but the big one was the North San Diego County Reuse Coalition in Washington, D.C. here on the 4th and 5th of April. I've been going to this thing, this was the 4th year that I've been, and this year was the most positive and productive. We believe, Ken Calvert's office said, because we're trying to get $20 million, Ken Calvert's office says, no, you need to ask for a whole lot more than that. And we met with Calvert, we met with the policy advisor for Calvert, Duncan Hunter, we met with Juan Vargas, Daryl Ice's council. We met Scott Peters, he was there. Davis, her legislative director. Feinstein's director, saw Feinstein in the hall. So very positive. And based on our application, which we believe we are the only ones with a regional application that has been presented, modified, and represented, that will be in competition, and we believe strongly that it'll be approved in the fall, and then next year will be a monumental year to go, because that's when we're going to go pitch the appropriation. The approval is one thing, but unless they give us the money, then it's all for naught. That was the one big issue, and then of course we pitched the tax-free municipal bonds. They want to take it out of the budget. We told everyone that we saw that, it's a big piece of funding for agencies like ourselves. So we got some very positive yeses from a number of the Democratic representatives, but from the Republican representatives, they just didn't want to take any of the tools, and they wanted all the tools on the table to talk about. So we'll see where that rolls. But we definitely had a very positive adventure for that journey.
That's all? Did
That's
you
all
attend
for-
anything else?
The others.
Oh, the others.
All the rest, yes.
Okay, all the rest.
Nothing to add.
Well, I had intended to go to the water policy, and I wasn't able to because of a family situation. So I want to thank those of you who went and have shared the information of it. I had known it was really good and I signed up for it, but turned out I couldn't go. And
Been
I
one
was-
of the better conferences.
I thought it was a really good one, and I had talked with, is it Nina from,
Westford, yeah.
who'd said, oh, you really gotta go, but it didn't work out, so appreciate you sharing what you heard. I've always have gone to the summits, but this year, when I saw how many were going, thought we were well represented, you'd share the information, and I'd save you guys one little per diem. I did go to CAWU, of course, as president, and I appreciate the feedback from our board members, and I did think Gary did a good job of saying, like, what was the word? Gloom and doom. He just put it out, like, this is where it's headed, and since he's up there, I feel I have a lot of trust in what he's saying. Doesn't mean, as Hal said, that it will happen. I think there'll be a lot of challenges, but it's important that we let people know that we challenge where it's going. And that was all of my attendance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, other business, there's information in the packet on CSDA legislative days. Next item is director's comments. I'll start with Director Evans.
I don't think I have a comment. I feel like our agendas are very full and don't need to add anything to them at this time. And once again, I am very impressed after, this is the most thorough budget, rate, finance information, and staff's done an amazing job.
I agree. Director Hernandez.
I would like to add a future agenda item, and I don't know if 60 days is enough time, but I would hope it would be, to do a land inventory of all of the properties that we own, either jointly or connected, because a couple of us got a big whopping surprise at a lunch we attended about this 49 acres that was mentioned the other day. And having no idea, I've been on the board 6 years, I had no idea that they had it. So, yes.
Maybe I can add to that. So I am preparing an exhibit for all the board members. It's going to be a map, and it'll have an attachment that has some specifics on the property. So it'll be a map, it'll show where all the district-owned parcels are, and it'll have a number associated with it, and then you'll go to like a spreadsheet, and it'll show for that parcel, here's the assessor's parcel number, the acreage, when we acquired it, things like that. It may not answer all the questions, but at least it'll give the directors information that they can start asking more probing questions.
Perfect.
And I think after the beginning of the next fiscal year, we'll embark on a strategic planning process. And one component of that strategic planning process, I'd like to get direction from the board as to what do we want to do about the district-owned property that we have.
Well, wonderful.
Oh, and I think that exhibit should be ready sometime at the latter part of next week or the week after that.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one question on that. Where are you getting the information from? Because information we've had in the past has been spotty or wrong. Where are you getting the information from that prior general managers couldn't seem to get?
I can't speak to anything that happened before, but we're going through public records, we're going through our GIS system and the county assessor's office information,
County assessor's.
all the parcel-based information, that's where we're starting. The exhibit won't show all of our easements, so if we just have a pipeline easement, this is gonna be district-owned property.
Perfect.
And there'll also be a column to say whether the property is improved or not. So if we own a property that has a water tank on it, we'll say, has a tank on it. If it's vacant land, we'll just say it's vacant land.
Or a house or an apartment building?
Anything that's on there, we'll try to, hopefully not a lot of those.
You might own,
Director Martin.
the only thing I would like to say is a great meeting, and I'm just hoping that, Mike, you have your computer ready at the next meeting to start changing numbers and plotting back and forth, and what it would mean if you did this or if you did that, because I know you're a whiz at it, and I look forward to that.
Director Snow.
Yeah, with the audit kicking off again here soon, do we have any concerns that we're not compliant with our policy as it pertains to competing contracts that surpass $100,000 a year annual spend? And this is the auditors, I suspect, are going to bring this up if we don't, as an issue, right?
Yeah, so I think maybe two issues. I don't know if that would be caught up in the audit, and we have compiled a list of the vendors of over $100,000, and we're trying to get some time to come up for air. I mean, this has been a lot of hard work we've been doing, and it's been hard to find the time to get on that, but that's an important topic, and we'll be bringing that forward.
Thank you.
Is this a third year of a 3-year contract for them?
Third, yes.
Third year of a 3-year contract? Okay.
Is that it? Okay, I think we're out of agenda items, so I think we're adjourned.
Okay.
All right.